Esoteric Treatise of Hermetic Astrology by Samael Aun Weor. Part 2. Chapter 8, Scorpio. The great Hierophant Jesus Christ told Nicodemus, Verily, verily, I say unto thee, except a man be born again, he cannot see the kingdom of God. It is necessary to be born of water and the Spirit in order to be able to enter the kingdom of esotericism, the magus regnum. It is urgent to be born again in order to have the full right to enter the kingdom. It is urgent to become twice born. This matter of the second birth was not understood by Nicodemus, and neither has it been understood by all biblical sections. It is necessary to have studied comparative religion and have the key of the arcane A-Z-F, if we truly want to comprehend the words of Jesus to Nicodemus. The different biblical sects are fully convinced that they really comprehend what to be born again means and interpret it in the most varied of ways, but certainly, even if they possess much biblical erudition and document one verse with another, and try to explain one verse with another, or other verses, the reality is that they do not understand it if they do not possess the secret key, the arcane A-Z-F. Nicodemus was wise, he knew the Holy Scriptures profoundly, and yet, he did not understand. And said, How can a man be born when he is old? Can he enter the second time into his mother's womb, and be born? Jesus, the great Kabir, then gave Nicodemus a Mayan type of answer, Verily, verily, I say unto thee, except a man be born of water and of the Spirit, he cannot enter into the kingdom of God. It is clear that the one who does not have information other than that of the dead letter, the one who does not understand the double significance of the biblical verses, the one who has never known the arcane A-Z-F, interprets these words of the great Kabir in his own way with only the information that he possesses and believes that with his sect's baptism or something similar, the problem of the second birth is already resolved. For the Mayas, the spirit is living fire, and they say, we must unite what is above with what is below, by means of the water and fire. Hindu Brahmins symbolize the second birth sexually. In their liturgy, a large golden cow is constructed and the candidate to the second birth has to pass through the hollow body of the cow 3 times, by dragging himself, exiting through the vulva, and thus remains consecrated as a true Brahmandvipa, or twice-born, once of his mother and another of the cow. It is in this Maimer that the Brahmins symbolically explain the second birth taught by Jesus to Nicodemus. We have already said in preceding chapters that the cow represents the Divine Mother. But the interesting thing is that the Brahmins call themselves twice born, and their second birth is sexual, born of the cow and exited from within her womb through the vulva. This matter is very thorny, and the lunar race mortally hates it. They prefer to kill the cow and then insult everyone who talks about the mysteries of sex and the arcane A-Z-F. The Brahmins are not twice born, but symbolically they are. Neither is the master mason truly a master, but symbolically he is. The interesting thing is to reach the second birth, and the problem is 100% sexual. Whoever wants to enter that land of the fourth dimension, in those Jinas valleys, mountains and temples, in that kingdom of the twice-born, must work with the rough stone, chisel it, give it shape, as we would say in Masonic language. We respectfully need to lift that marvelous stone which separates us from the land of the 1001 nights, from the land of marvels where the twice-born live happily. It is impossible to roll the stone, lift it, if we have first not given it a cubic shape with the chisel and the hammer. Peter, the disciple of Jesus Christ, is the Aladdin, the marvelous interpreter, authorized to lift the stone that closes the sanctuary of the great mysteries. Peter's original name is Pater with its 3 consonants P, T, R, which are radical. P comes to remind us of the Father who is in secrecy, of the fathers of the gods, our fathers, or Fataras. T, the Tao, the divine hermaphrodite, the man and woman sexually united during the act. R, this letter is vital in the Inri, it is the sacred and terribly divine fire, the Egyptian Ra. Peter, Pater, the illuminator, is the master of sexual magic, the generous master who always awaits us at the entrance of the terrible path. The religious cow, the famous Cretan minotaur, is the first thing that we find in the mystical subterranean tunnel which leads to the earth of the twice-born. The philosopher's stone of the old medieval alchemists is sex, and the second birth is sexual. Chapter 8 of the Laws of Manu says, a kingdom inhabited above all by Sudras, full of impious men and deprived of twice-born inhabitants, will totally perish rapidly, attacked by hunger and disease. Without Peter's doctrine, the second birth is impossible. We Gnostics study the doctrine of Peter. Infrasexuals, degenerate persons mortally hate the doctrine of Peter. Many are the sincerely mistaken ones who believe that they can attain self-realization by excluding sex. Many are those who speak against sex, those who insult sex, those who spit their entire defamatory dribble in the sacred sanctuary of the third logos. Those who hate sex, those who say that sex is gross, unworldly, animal, bestial, are the insulters, those who blaspheme against the Holy Spirit. Whoever pronounces himself against sexual magic, whoever spits his infamy in the sanctuary of the third logos, will never be able to attain the second birth. The name of sexual magic in Sanskrit is Mithuna. Peter's doctrine is the Mithuna, and Jesus said, "Thou art Peter, rock, and upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it." The key of the Mithuna is the black lingam inserted in the yoni, attributes of the god Shiva, the third logos, the Holy Spirit. In the Mithuna, the phallus should enter the vagina, but the semen should never be ejaculated or spilled. The couple should withdraw from the sexual act before reaching the spasm, in order to avoid the spilling of the seminal liquid. Restrained desire will transmute the seminal liquid into creative energy. The sexual energy ascends up to the cerebrum. This is how the cerebrum is seminized. This is how the semen becomes cerebrized. The Mithuna is the exercise that permits us to awaken and develop the Kundalini, the igneous serpent of our magical powers. When the Kundalini awakens, it ascends along the medullary canal of the spinal column. The Kundalini opens the 7 churches of the Apocalypse of St. John. The 7 churches are situated on the spinal column. The first church is Ephesus and corresponds to the sexual organs. The sacred serpent, coiled 3.5 times, sleeps within the church of Ephesus. The second church is Smyrna, located at the level of the prostate and confers upon us the power over the waters. The third church is Pergamos, located at the level of the navel and confers upon us the power over the fire. The fourth church is Thyatira, located at the level of the heart and confers upon us the power over the air and many powers, such as voluntary unfoldment, that of the jinas, etc. The fifth church is Sardis, located at the level of the creative larynx and confers upon us the power of the magical ear, which permits us to listen to the voices of the superior worlds and the music of the spheres. The sixth church is Philadelphia and is located at the point between the eyebrows and confers upon us the power to see the internal worlds and the creatures that inhabit them. The seventh church is Laodicea. This marvelous church is the 1,000-petaled lotus located in the pineal gland, on the superior part of the cerebrum. Laodicea confers upon us the powers of polyvision with which we can study all the mysteries of the great day and the great night. The sacred fire of the Kundalini opens the 7 churches in a successive order, as it slowly ascends along the spinal canal. The igneous serpent of our magical powers ascends very slowly according to the merits of the heart. When they make contact in the tribene, near the coccyx at the base of the spinal column, the solar and lunar forces of the sexual energy have the power of awakening the sacred serpent in order for it to ascend along the spinal canal. The sacred fire, ascending along the spinal column, has the form of a serpent. The sacred fire has 7 degrees of power. It is urgent to work with the 7 degrees of the power of fire. Sex, in itself, is the 9th sphere. The descent to the 9th sphere was, in the ancient mysteries, the maximum test of the supreme dignity of the Hierophant. Buddha, Jesus the Great Kabir, Hermes, Zoroaster, Muhammad, Dante, etc., etc., etc. had to go through that maximum test. Many are the pseudo-esoteric and pseudo-occultist students who, upon reading occultist or pseudo-occultist literature, would like to immediately enter the land of Jina's marvels, into the bliss of continuous ecstasy, etc. Those students do not want to understand that in order to be able to ascend one must first descend. It is necessary to first descend into the 9th sphere. It is only in this manner that we can ascend. The magistery of fire is very long and terrible. If the student commits the mistake of spilling the cup of Hermes, he loses his preceding work, the igneous serpent of our magical powers descends. All the esoteric schools mention 5 initiations of greater mysteries. Those initiations are very intimately related with the magistery of fire. The sacred fire has the power of fecundating the sacred property of the initiate. We have already said it before and we repeat it again, that the property is the symbolic 5-legged sacred cow. When the property is made fecund within the initiate, then the solar bodies are gestated within her womb by the deed and grace of the 3rd logos. The solar race, the twice-born, have solar bodies. Run-of-the-mill people, humanity in general, is a lunar race and only has lunar bodies of a lunar type. Pseudo-esoterist and pseudo-occultist schools mention the theosophical septenary, the internal bodies, but they ignore that those vehicles are really protoplasmic, lunar bodies. Within those protoplasmic, lunar bodies of intellectual animals are contained the laws of evolution and involution. The protoplasmic, lunar bodies are certainly the common property of all the beasts of nature. The protoplasmic, lunar bodies are derived from a remote mineral past, and they return to the mineral past because everything returns to its original point of departure. The protoplasmic, lunar bodies evolve up to a certain point which is perfectly defined by nature and then initiate their involutive return to the original point of departure. The virginal sparks, the monadic waves caused to emerge in the mineral past, the protoplasmic bodies with which the mineral elementals, the gnomes or pygmies garbed themselves. The entrance of the mineral elementals into the vegetable evolution produced a change in the protoplasmic bodies. The entrance of the vegetable elementals into animal evolution of the irrational provoked, as is natural, new changes in the protoplasmic, lunar bodies. Protoplasms are always subject to many changes, and the entrance of the animal elementals into wombs of the intellectual animal species gave these lunar bodies the aspect that they now have. Nature needs the intellectual animal mistakenly called man, just as he is, in the state in which he now lives. The entire evolution of protoplasm has the creation of these intellectual machines as the objective. Intellectual machines have the power of picking up the cosmic energies of infinite space to unconsciously transform them and then automatically transmit them to the interior layers of the earth. All of humanity in its entirety is an organ of nature, an indispensable organ for the planetary organism of the earth. When any cell of said vital organ, in other words, when any subject is too perverse or fully fulfills his time of 108 lives without having produced fruit, it ceases to be born so as to precipitate its involution in the infernal worlds. If someone wants to escape from that tragic law of protoplasmic involution, he should create for himself and through tremendous super efforts, the solar bodies. In all the elements of nature, in every chemical substance, in every fruit, exists its corresponding type of hydrogen, and the hydrogen of sex is the C12. The fire, the fohat fecundates the womb of the 5-legged sacred cow. But it is only with the sexual hydrogen C12 that the solar bodies are formed, are crystallized. Within the 7 notes of the musical scale are carried out all the biological and physiological processes whose final result is that marvelous elixir called semen. The process is initiated with the note do from the moment in which the food enters the mouth and continues with the notes re, mi, fa, sol, la, and when the musical C resounds, the extraordinary elixir called semen is already prepared. The sexual hydrogen is deposited in the semen, and we can move it on to a second superior octave do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, si, through a special shock. This special shock is the sexual restraint of the methuna. The second musical octave causes the sexual hydrogen, C12, to crystallize in the extraordinary and marvelous form of the solar astral body. A second shock of the methuna causes the sexual hydrogen, C12, to move on to a third superior octave do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, si. The third musical octave will originate the crystallization of the sexual hydrogen, C12, in the magnificent solar form of the legitimate mental body. A third shock will move the sexual hydrogen, C12, to a fourth musical octave, Do, Re, Mi, Fa, Sol, La, Si. The fourth musical octave will originate the crystallization of the sexual hydrogen in the form of the body of conscious will, or causal body. The one who already possesses the four bodies known as the physical, astral, mental, and causal, affords the luxury of incarnating the being in order to become a true man, a solar man. Normally, the being is not born, does not die, and neither does it reincarnate, but when we already have the solar bodies, we can incarnate it, and we move on to really be. To the one who knows, the word gives power. No one pronounced it, no one will pronounce it, except he who has it incarnated. Many Gnostic students will ask themselves why we do not mention the vital body and why we only count four bodies, excluding the vital. The answer to this question is that the vital body is merely the superior section of the physical body. In the third initiation of fire, the solar astral body is born. In the fourth initiation of fire, the solar mental body is born. In the fifth initiation of fire, the causal body, or body of conscious will, is born. The 5 initiations of greater mysteries only have as objective the fabrication of the solar bodies. In Gnosticism and Esotericism, one understands as second birth the fabrication of the solar bodies and the incarnation of the being. The solar bodies gestate within the womb of the Prakriti. The being is conceived by the deed and grace of the third Logos, within the womb of the Prakriti. She is a virgin before childbirth, in childbirth, and after childbirth. Every master of the White Lodge is the child of an immaculate virgin. Whoever attains the second birth comes out of the ninth sphere, sex. Whoever achieves the second birth remains totally prohibited from having sexual contact again, and that prohibition is for all eternity. Whoever attains the second birth joins a secret temple, the temple of the twice-born. The run-of-the-mill intellectual animal believes that he is a man, but in reality, he is mistaken, because only the twice-born are true men. We knew a lady adept of the White Lodge who fabricated her solar bodies in merely 10 years of very intense work in the ninth sphere. That lady lives with the angels, archangels, seraphim, etc. By working very intensely in the ninth sphere without allowing oneself to fall, one can carry out the work of fabricating the solar bodies in 10 or 20 years more or less. The lunar race mortally hates this science of the sacred cow, and before accepting it, it prefers to find escape routes and justifications with flashy and hypocritical phrases. The Bonzos and Dugpa of Red Cape, the black magicians, practice black tantrism. They ejaculate the semen during the Mithuna. It is in this manner that they awaken and develop the abominable Kundartiguator organ. It is urgent to know that the Kundartiguator organ is the tempting serpent of Eden, the sacred fire projected downwards, Satan's tail whose root is in the coccyx. The abominable Kundartiguator organ fortifies the lunar bodies and the ego. Those who live postponing the second birth for future lives end up losing the opportunity, and once the 108 lives expire, they enter the infernal worlds, where only crying and the gnashing of teeth are heard. Diogenes sought a man with his lantern in all of Athens and did not find him. We must seek the twice-born, the true men with the lantern of Diogenes. They are very rare to find. Many pseudo-occultist and pseudo-esoterist students abound who say they want to supposedly attain self-realization, but since they are lunar, when they get to know this science of the ninth sphere, they become scandalized, they curse us, they launch against us their entire defamatory dribble, and if we were in the times of Esdras, they would immolate the sacred cow, saying, "His blood be on us, and on our children." The road that leads to the abyss is paved with good intentions. It is not only the perverse who enter the abyss. Let us remember the parable of the sterile fig tree. The tree that does not put forth fruit is cut and cast into the fire. Magnificent students of pseudo-occultism and pseudo-esotericism also live in the infernal worlds. Scorpio is a very interesting sign. The poison of Scorpio mortally wounds the enemies of the Mithuna, the puritanical insulters who hate sex, those who blaspheme against the third Logos, the perverse fornicators, the degenerated ones of infrasexuality, homosexuals, masturbators, etc. Scorpio governs the sexual organs. Scorpio is the house of Mars, the planet of war, and sex is the root of the great battle between white and black magicians, between the solar and lunar forces. The lunar race mortally hates everything that has the flavor of the Mithuna, sexual magic, white tantrism, the sacred cow, etc. The natives of Scorpio can fall into the most frightening fornication or totally regenerate themselves. In practice, we have been able to verify that the natives of Scorpio suffer a lot in the first half of their life and even have a love that causes them great bitterness, but in the second half of their life, everything changes, their luck noticeably improves. The natives of Scorpio have a certain tendency towards anger and vengeance. They forgive someone with great difficulty. The women of Scorpio are always in danger of remaining as widows and going through many financial needs during the first part of their life. The men of Scorpio suffer much misery during the first half of life, but due to experience, they improve the second half of their existence. The persons of Scorpio are persons with energy. They are ambitious, reserved, frank, and energetic. As friends, the natives of Scorpio are truly friends, sincere, faithful, capable of sacrificing themselves for friendship. But as enemies, they are very fearful, vengeful, and dangerous. The mineral of Scorpio is the magnet, its stone is the topaz. The exercise of Scorpio is the Mithuna, and the latter is not only practiced during Scorpio but all the time, in a continuous manner, until achieving the second birth. However, we should warn that one should never practice 2 consecutive times in the same night. It is only permitted to practice once daily. It is also urgent to know that one should never force one's spouse to practice the Mithuna when she is sick or when she is menstruating, or in the state of pregnancy, because it is a crime. The woman who has given birth to a child can only practice the Mithuna after 40 days from childbirth. The Mithuna does not impede the reproduction of the species, because the seed always passes to the womb without the need of spilling the semen. The multiple combinations of the infinite substance are marvelous. Many are the students of occultism who complain because they fail, because they suffer seminal discharges, because they do not succeed at avoiding seminal ejaculation. We advise those students a short exercise of 5 minutes on Friday of each week if the case is very serious, or a short exercise of 5 minutes daily, if the case is not too serious. After 1 year with these short exercises of 5 minutes of the Mithuna, one can lengthen them by 5 minutes more for another year, and on the 3rd year one would practice 15 minutes daily. In this manner, little by little each year, one can lengthen the time of the exercise of the Mithuna until becoming capable of practicing 1 hour daily. Chapter 9, Sagittarius. From Geber to the enigmatic and powerful Count Cagliostro, who transmuted lead into gold and fabricated diamonds of the best quality, there existed a long series of alchemists and investigators of the philosopher's stone, sex. Obviously, it is quite clear that only those sages who dissolved the lunar ego and despised the vanities of this world had true success in their inquiries. Among all of those victorious alchemists and adepts who worked in the laboratory of sexual alchemy, Basil Valentine, Ripley, Bacon, Honks Roger, etc. stood out. Nicholas Flamel is still very debated. Some suppose that he did not attain the difficult goal during his life. Since he refused to reveal his secret to the king, he ended his days locked up in the terrible Bastille. Frankly, we are convinced that Nicholas Flamel, the great alchemist, succeeded in transmuting all the lead of his personality into the marvelous gold of the spirit. Trevisan, the famous Trevisan, spent his entire fortune seeking the philosopher's stone and managed to discover the secret at the age of 75 years, already too late. The philosopher's stone is sex, and the secret is the Mithuna, sexual magic, but the poor Trevisan, in spite of possessing a formidable intelligence, only managed to discover the secret in his old age. Paracelsus, the disciple of Trithemius, great alchemist and doctor, knew the secret of the philosopher's stone, transmuted lead into gold, and carried out surprising cures. Many suppose that Paracelsus died a violent death, by assassination or suicide, for having revealed a part of the mysteries, but the reality is that Paracelsus disappeared without anyone knowing how or why. All of us know that Paracelsus acquired that which is called the elixir of long life, and that with said marvelous elixir he still sustains himself. He lives with the same physical body that he had in the Middle Ages. Schroepfer and Lavater practiced certain two very dangerous magical rites, which caused them a violent death without having attained in-death self-realization. The famous Dr. J.D. sought the philosopher's stone and never found it, but he was reduced to the most frightening misery. In the final years of his life, the poor doctor horribly degenerated with mediumship and became a toy of the inferior entities that live in the molecular world. Seton was imprisoned for refusing to reveal the secret of the philosopher's stone. Dr. Pryse, of the Royal Society of London, succeeded in transmuting physical lead into material gold, but upon wanting to repeat the experiment before his colleagues, he failed, and then, ashamed and desperate, he committed suicide. Delisle, the great Delisle, for the same reasons, was imprisoned, and upon trying to escape from the horrible dungeon where he was imprisoned, was killed by the guards. All these failures and hundreds of others reveal that the true practical occultism and its terrible magical powers demand the most frightening sanctity, without which it is impossible to face the dangers of alchemy and magic. To speak of sanctity in these times is something very difficult, because the world is full of stupidly sanctimonious persons who presume to be saints. The great master of strength named Mona, conversing with us in Oriental Tibet, told us, to become united with the inner is very difficult. Out of two who attempt to unite themselves with the inner self, merely one achieves, because as the poet Guillermo Valencia said, among the rhythms of the verse, crime is also hidden. Crime garbs itself as a saint, martyr, apostle. Millions of persons who are fans of occultist literature presume of holiness. They do not eat meat, or smoke, or drink, but at home, they fight with their spouse, they beat their children, fornicate, commit adultery, they do not pay their debts, they promise and do not fulfill, etc., etc., etc. In the physical world, many persons have reached absolute chastity, but when these persons are subjected to the test in the internal worlds, they then end up being frighteningly fornicating. Many are the devotees of the path who in the physical world would never drink a cup of wine, but in the internal worlds, they are lost drunkards when they were subjected to the test. Many are the devotees of the path who in the physical world are humble sheep, but subjected to the test in the internal worlds, they result being tigers. Many are the devotees of the path who do not covet money but covet psychic powers. There are many devotees of the path, in the world, whose humility astonishes others. They can calmly sleep on the floor, at the door of a rich man, and are content with the crumbs that fall from the master's table, but they are proud of possessing many virtues or boast of their humility. Many people have aspired to sanctity when they found out that authentic cases of true saints do exist. Many are those who envy the holiness of others and due to this also want to be saints. Many individuals do not work in the dissolution of the lunar ego because of pure mental laziness. Innumerable aspirants to the light eat 3 banquets daily. They are terribly gluttonous. Many do not murmur with their lips, but they murmur with their mind, and yet they believe that they never murmur. Rare are the aspirants who know how to obey the Father who is in secret. Wanting to tell the truth, almost all students of occultism lie. They have a deceitful tongue. They affirm what they have not experienced, and that is lie. Nowadays, it is very common to bear false witness, and many students of occultism do so without knowing that they commit a crime. Vanity also dresses in rags, and many are the aspirants who dress poorly and walk the streets in total untidiness. But vanity can also be seen through the holes of their clothes. Innumerable aspirants have not been able to abandon self-esteem. They love themselves too much, and they suffer the unutterable when someone snubs them. A multitude of aspirants are full of iffy thoughts. They have not been able to control their mind, and yet, they believe that they are doing very well. Innumerable pseudo-esotericists and pseudo-occultists, if they are not avaricious with money, are then avaricious with the teachings. They have not been able to transcend avarice. Thousands of aspirants carry worldliness in themselves, even when they never attend a dance or party. Many devotees of the path have not been able to abandon stealing. They steal books, they go into esoteric schools to steal something, even when it is theories, secrets. They fake loyalty while they fulfill their job of stealing, and then they do not return. Innumerable devotees say bad words, some only pronounce them mentally, even when their lips speak sweetness. Many virtuous persons are cruel with people. We knew the case of a virtuous man who hurt with mean phrases a wretched person who composed a verse for him. The unfortunate man was hungry, and since he was a poet, he composed a verse for the virtuous man with the purpose of obtaining a coin. The response was serious. Presuming of modesty and humility, the virtuous man insulted the hungry man. A multitude of aspirants to the light are offended and cruelly humiliated by the preceptors of certain schools. Many are the persons who would be capable of everything in life except killing someone, but they kill with their ironies, with their evil actions, with wounding laughter, with a harsh word. Many are the husbands who have killed their wives with their evil actions, with their bad conduct, with their horrible jealousies, ingratitude, etc. Many are the wives who have killed their husbands with their bad character, with stupid jealousies, with their inconsiderate demands, etc., etc., etc. We should not forget that every illness has psychic causes. Insults, irony, thunderous and offensive laughter. Evil words serve to cause harm, illnesses, to assassinate, etc. Many parents would have lived a little longer if their children would have allowed them. Almost all human beings are matricides, parricides, fratricides, uxoricides, etc., etc. Pity is lacking in students of occultism. They are incapable of sacrificing themselves for their fellow men who suffer and cry. There is not true charity in thousands of aspirants. They presume of being charitable, but when we call on them to struggle for a new social order, they flee terrified, or they justify themselves saying that the law of karma and evolution will resolve everything. Cruel, merciless, are the aspirants to the light. They say that they love, but they do not. They preach charity, but do not practice it. The sign of Sagittarius invites us to reflect on all of this. Sagittarius is symbolized by a man who holds an arrow in one hand, half horse, half man. The horse represents the animal ego, the pluralized I garbed with its lunar bodies. The I is not something individual. The I does not have any individuality. The I is plural. The lunar ego is constituted by a sum of small I. Each psychological defect is personified by a small I. The entirety of all of our defects is represented by the pluralized I. The most serious problem that everyone who attains the second birth has to solve is that of the dissolution of the lunar ego. The newly born master is garbed with his solar bodies, but his ego is garbed with the lunar bodies. Two paths open before the newly born master, that of the right and that of the left. On the path of the right tread those masters who work in the dissolution of the lunar ego. On the path of the left tread those who do not concern themselves with the dissolution of the lunar ego. The masters who do not dissolve the lunar ego become Hanasmushans. A Hanasmushan is a subject with a double center of gravity. The master garbed with his solar bodies and the lunar ego garbed with its lunar vehicles constitute a double personality, a Hanasmushan. The Hanasmushan is one half angel and one half beast, like the centaur of Sagittarius. The Hanasmushan has two inner personalities, one of an angel and another of a demon. The Hanasmushan is an abortion of the cosmic mother, a failure. If the Gnostic student dissolves the lunar ego before the second birth, he is completely cured. He solves his problem ahead of time. He secures his success. Whoever invokes Andronelek in the internal worlds will have the most tremendous surprise, because the demon Andromlek or Andromlek, the master of the White Lodge, can attend. This person is a Hanasmushan with a double center of gravity. The dissolution of the lunar ego is fundamental in the great work. Those who attain the second birth feel the necessity of eliminating the lunar bodies, but this is not possible without first having dissolved the lunar ego. The twice-born become stagnant in their inner progress when they lack love. Everyone who forgets his divine mother becomes stagnant in his progress. A lack of love exists when we commit the error of forgetting our divine mother. It is impossible to eliminate all those small I that constitute the lunar ego without the help of the divine mother. The comprehension of any defect is fundamental, indispensable, when one wants to eliminate the small I that personifies it, but the work of elimination in itself is impossible without the help of the sacred five-legged cow. The Divine Mother eliminates broken bottles. Each small I is a bottle within which a fraction of the essence is engrossed. This means that the essence, the Buddhata, the soul or fraction of the human soul that every intellectual animal has become thousands of fractions which are bottled up. For example, anger is represented by hundreds or thousands of I. Each is a bottle within which the essence is engrossed. To each bottle corresponds a fraction of the essence. All those bottles of anger, all those I's, live in each of the 49 departments or regions of the subconscious. The comprehension of anger in any subconscious department means to break a bottle. Then, the corresponding fraction of the essence becomes free. When this happens, the Divine Mother intervenes by eliminating the broken bottle, the cadaver of a small, shattered I. Each cadaver no longer has within the fraction of the soul that it previously imprisoned, and this cadaver disintegrates little by little in the infernal worlds. It is necessary to know that the Divine Mother only intervenes in this case, when the bottle is shattered, when the essence enclosed in it has been liberated. If the Divine Mother was to eliminate the bottle with the little genie inside, the poor little genie, in other words, the fraction of the soul, would also have to enter the infernal worlds. When all the bottles have been broken, the essence in its totality has been liberated, and the Divine Mother dedicates herself to the elimination of cadavers. The comprehension of anger in 20 or 30 subconscious regions does not mean that one has comprehended it in all the 49 departments. The comprehension of anger in Department 3 or 4 means the breaking, shattering of a bottle either in Department 3 or 4. Nonetheless, many I of anger, many bottles, can continue in all the other subconscious departments. Each defect processes itself in each of the 49 regions of the subconscious and has many roots. Anger, covetousness, lust, envy, pride, laziness, gluttony have thousands of bottles, thousands of small I's within which the essence is bottled up. When the pluralized I is killed and eliminated, the essence unites with the being, with the inner self, and the lunar bodies are eliminated during a mystical trance which lasts 3 days. After the 3 days, the master, garbed with his solar bodies, returns, comes back to his physical body. This is the initiatic resurrection. Every resurrected master has solar bodies, but does not have lunar bodies. The resurrected masters have powers over fire, air, water, and the earth. Resurrected masters can transmute physical lead into physical gold. The resurrected masters govern life and death. They can conserve the physical body during millions of years. They know the quadrature of the circle and the perpetual movement. They have the universal medicine and speak the very pure language of the divine tongue which, like a golden river, flows delightfully beneath the thick jungle of the sun. Whoever is dying from moment to moment is subjected to thousands of esoteric tests in each of the 49 subconscious departments of Jaldabaoth. After coming out victorious from a few departments or regions of the subconscious, many initiates fail in a few departments in certain tests related with a certain psychological defect. The Divine Mother always helps us to comprehend when we call upon her, when we call upon the flame of the serpent. The Divine Mother prays for us to the White Lodge and eliminates one by one those that have already died. The Divine Mother, the sacred five-legged cow, is Mother Space, the mother of the spiritual monad who takes refuge in the eternal nothing-all of the ineffable Father, in the absolute silence and the absolute darkness. If it is for something that we have our particular maternal ray, our individual Divine Mother, it is precisely because she, in herself, is the mother of the inner being, bidden within the monad. One with the monad. If Artemis Loquia or Neter was Luna in the sky for the Greeks, the chaste Diana on earth was the Divine Mother presiding over the birth and life of the child, and for the Egyptians it was Hecate in the Inferno, the goddess of death, that reigned over the spells and sacred magic. Hecate Diana Luna is the trine Divine Mother, while at the same time one. In the fashion of the Hindu Trimurti, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. The Divine Mother is Isis, the series of the mysteries of Eleusis, the celestial Venus, she, who in the beginning of the world originated the attraction of the sexes and propagated with human generations with eternal fecundity. She is Proserpine, of the nocturnal barks, the one who in her triple appearance, celestial, terrestrial and infernal, oppresses the terrible demons of the Avernus, keeping the doors of the subterranean prisons closed and triumphantly traveling the sacred forests. Sovereign of the Stygian dwelling, she shines in the center of the darkness of Acheron, the same as on the earth and the Elysian fields. Due to a certain mistake of a few sacred individuals in archaic times, the poor intellectual animal received the abominable Kundartagwaiter organ. Such an organ is the tail of Satan, the sexual fire heading downwards, towards the atomic infernos of the lunar ego. When the intellectual animal lost the Kundartagwaiter organ, the evil consequences remained within each subject. These bad consequences are constituted by the pluralized I, the lunar ego. On the basis of in-depth comprehension and profound inner meditation, we can and should eliminate from ourselves, with the help of the Divine Mother, the evil consequences of the abominable Kundartagwaiter organ. In other times, the human being did not want to live in this world. He had realized his tragic situation. Certain sacred individuals gave the human race the abominable Kundartagwaiter organ in order for him to become thrilled with the beauties of this world. The result was that the human being became thrilled with the world. When those sacred individuals removed the Kundartagwaiter organ from humanity, the bad consequences remained in each person. With the help of the Divine Mother, we can eliminate the evil consequences of the abominable Kundartagwaiter organ. The sign of Sagittarius, with its famous centaur, one half man, one half beast, is something that should never be forgotten. Sagittarius is the house of Jupiter. The metal of Sagittarius is tin, the stone is the blue sapphire. In practice, we have been able to verify that the natives of Sagittarius are very fornicating and passionate. Natives of Sagittarius love journeys, explorations, adventures, sports. Natives of Sagittarius easily become angry and then forgive. Natives of Sagittarius are very comprehensive. They love beautiful music and possess marvelous intelligence. Sagittarians are tenacious. When they seem to have definitely failed, they seem to resurrect from their own ashes like the phoenix bird of mythology, astonishing all their friends and enemies. The natives of Sagittarius are capable of embarking on great enterprises, even when they are surrounded by immense dangers. The financial life of Sagittarians is sometimes very good, but Sagittarians also go through great bitterness and financial difficulties. Lust is what harms Sagittarians the most. Exercise. Crouch, in the manner of the Peruvian guacas. Place your hands on your legs, with the index fingers pointing upwards, towards the sky, in order to attract the rays of the planet Jupiter, so as to intensely magnetize the legs, the thighs. The mantram Isis is the mantram of this exercise. Isis is the Divine Mother. This mantram is pronounced by prolonging the sound of each of the 4 letters that constitute it, Isis, divided into 2 syllables, ISAS. With this exercise, one awakens clairvoyance and the power of polyvision, which permits all of us to study the Akashic archives of nature in order to get to know the history of the earth and its races. It is necessary to practice intensely, daily, in order to magnetize the blood in the femoral arteries. This is how one acquires the power to study in the memory of nature. The centaur with its 2 faces, one looking forward and the other backward, is indicating to us this precious faculty of clairvoyance. Chapter 10, Capricorn. The being, the inner cell, the monad, has 2 souls. The first is the spiritual soul, the second is the human soul. The former is Dante's Beatrice. Beautiful Helen, the Shulamite of the wise Solomon, the ineffable adorable wife, the booty of theosophy. The latter is the human soul, the causal principle, the noble husband, the superior Manas of theosophy. Even when it may seem rare and strange, while the human soul works, the spiritual soul plays. Adam and Eve integrate within the monad, and its Kabbalistic value is 10, which reminds us of the Io, in other words, of the vowels E, O. The very sacred union of the eternal masculine with the eternal feminine, the integration of the opposites within the essential and divine monad. The divine triad, Atman Buddhi Manas, the being, we have said, and we repeat, is not born, neither does he die, nor reincarnate in the NM of the mill intellectual animals. We can and should affirm beyond all doubt that only a fraction of the human soul lives inside the lunar bodies. The latter is the essence, the psychic material to elaborate a soul, to develop the human soul and thereby the spiritual soul. The monad, the being, creates, fabricates, develops his two souls, and the latter should serve and obey him. We should distinguish between monads and souls. A monad, in other words, a spirit, is a soul is possessed. Distinguish between the monad of a world and the soul of a world, between the monad of a man and the soul of a man, between the monad of an ant and the soul of an ant. The human organism, in final synthesis, is constituted by billions and trillions of infinitesimal monads. There are several types and orders of primary elements of all existence, of every organism, in the manner of germs of all the phenomena of nature. We can call the latter monads, employing the term of Leibniz, in the absence of a more descriptive term to indicate the simplicity of the simplest existence. An atom, as a vehicle of action, corresponds to each of these germs or monads. The monads attract each other, combine, transform themselves, giving form to every organism, world, microorganism, etc. Hierarchies exist among the monads. The inferior monads must obey the superior ones, that is the law. Inferior monads belong to the superior ones. All the trillions of monads that animate the human organism have to obey the owner, the chief, the principal monad. The regulating monad, the primordial monad, permits the activity of all of its subordinates inside the human organism, until the time indicated by the law of karma. When the billions or trillions of monads or vital germs abandon the physical body, death is then inevitable. The monads in themselves are indestructible. They abandon their old connections in order to briefly carry out other new ones. The return to this world, the re-entry, re-embodiment would be impossible without the work of the monads. They reconstruct new cells with their perceptions and sensations. They reconstruct new organisms. When the primordial monad is totally developed, it can afford to utilize its trillions of monads to create a world, a sun, a comet, and thus become a regulating monad of any star, but that is already something of God's. The monads or vital germs are not exclusive of the physical organism. Within the atoms of the internal bodies there are found imprisoned many orders and categories of living monads. The existence of any physical or supersensible, angelic or diabolical, solar or lunar body, has billions and trillions of monads as the foundation. The lunar ego in itself is a composite of atoms of the secret enemy. Unfortunately, the monads or vital germs are prisoners within such atoms. Now we will comprehend why occult science says the demon is God in reverse. To each atom corresponds a vital germ, a monad. All the infinite modifications, all the innumerable transformations, are the result of the varied combinations of the monads. Nature deposits in the three cerebrums of the human being a certain capital of vital values. When the latter are exhausted, death is inevitable. The three cerebrums are 1. The intellectual center, 2. The emotional center, 3. The motor center. After the death of the physical body, the ego, garbed with its lunar bodies, continues in the molecular world. Three things go to the cemetery, to the sepulchre: 1. The physical body, 2. The vital body, 3. The personality. The vital body floats near the sepulchre and disintegrates as the physical body disintegrates, as its monads become liberated. The personality is inside the sepulchre, but it comes out when someone takes flowers. When a mourner visits it, it ambulates in the cemetery and returns to the sepulchre. The personality has a beginning and an end. It slowly disintegrates in the cemetery. Proserpine, the queen of the infernos, is also Hecate, the blessed goddess Mother Death, under whose direction work the angels of death. Mother Space, converted into Mother Death, dearly loves her children, and that is why she takes them away. The angels of death, when they are working, wear their funeral suits. They assume a spectral figure. They clutch the scythe and with it cut the silver cord that connects the internal bodies to the physical body. The angels of death cut the cord of life and take the ego out of the physical body. The angels of death are very wise, and they develop and unfold under the ray of Saturn. The angels of death do not only know what is related with the run-of-the-mill death of the physical body, these ministers of death are, moreover, profoundly wise in everything related with the death of the pluralized I. After the death of the body, the disembodied one falls into a fainting fit which lasts 3.5 days. The Tibetan Book of the Dead says, "You have been in a faint during the last 3.5 days. As soon as you recover from this faint, you will have the thought, what has happened? For in that moment, the entire samsara, phenomenal universe, will begin." Revolution. The Kabbalistic value of the ego is 56. This is the number of Typhon, the mind without spirituality. The ego carries away its worldliness beyond the sepulchre of the physical body, and the retrospective vision of the life that just passed away is very terrible. After the great faint of 3.5 days, the deceased have to slowly relive in a retrospective manner the entire life that just passed. The time concept is something very important in the work of the retrospective vision of the life that just passed or retrospective vision of samsara. In the infernal worlds, all time scales are mineral, frightfully slow and oscillate between 80,000, 8,880 years. In this cellular region in which we live, gestation lasts 10 lunar months, infancy 100 lunar months, life more or less 1,000 lunar months. In the molecular world, events can be measured with the time scale that goes from 1 month to 40 minutes. In the electronic world, the time scale oscillates between 40 minutes and 2.5 seconds. The retrospective vision of samsara, the life that just passed, in the instant of death and during the subsequent 3.5 days, is of an electronic type, and that is why each event can be measured with the electronic time measurement. The retrospective vision of samsara in the molecular world is slower, and that is why each event is measured with the molecular time measurement. The inner self, the monad, the being with its two souls, before we were born in this valley of tears, dwells in the Milky Way and even during the life of the physical body. Here below, continues living in the stars. The fundamental thing for the essence, after death, is to attain the relative Buddhic state and the intermediate liberation. This is only possible for the soul embryo that we have within, by climbing, ascending to the electronic world. It is urgent to know that our divine immortal triad, our being, our Buddha, lives in the electronic world. To unite with the immortal triad after death, to be one with it, in fact means to have become a relative Buddha, to have achieved intermediate liberation, and to enjoy a beautiful vacation before returning to a new human organism. If the clear primordial light has been properly recognized at the supreme moment of death by the deceased, it is a clear sign that he has achieved intermediate liberation. If the deceased only perceives the secondary clear light at the supreme moment of death, it is a sign that he will have to struggle much to reach the relative Buddhic state. The difficult thing for the essence is to become unbottled, to escape from its prison, to come out of the lunar bodies, to abandon the pluralized I. Each person's karma is definitive in this matter. When the deceased has relived the entire life that has just passed in a retrospective manner, he then has to appear before the tribunals of karma in order to be judged. The legend of Zoroaster says, everyone whose good deeds exceeds his sin by 3 grams, goes to heaven, everyone whose sin is greater, goes to hell, while he, in whom they are equal, remains in the hemistican until the future body or resurrection. Nowadays, in these times of perversity and crude atheistic materialism, a portion of the disembodied join the submerged mineral kingdom, the infernal worlds, after the judgment. Also, many are the millions who enter a new womb in an immediate manner, without having had a good vacation in the superior worlds. Certainly, the selection process exists in all of nature. And few are those who achieve intermediate liberation and the relative Buddhic state. The disembodied join eternity under the influences of the moon and exit eternity through the doors of the moon. We have already seen in the lesson of Cancer that the entire life of all persons is processed under the influences of the moon, Mercury, Venus, the Sun, Mars, Jupiter and Saturn, with life closing with a lunar finale. Really, the moon takes us, and the moon brings us, and the 7 types of planetary vibrations in their indicated classical order also repeat themselves after death, for as it is above, so is it below. The essences, who after having been judged, have the right to intermediate liberation and the relative Buddhic state, need a certain type of very special ecstasy and constant right effort in order to become unbottled, to escape from the lunar bodies and the ego. Fortunately, different groups of masters assist the disembodied and help them in this work with the rays of grace. In the same manner that republics, kingdoms, presidents, kings, governors, etc. exist in this cellular world in which we live, likewise in the molecular world, there are many paradises, regions and kingdoms where the essences enjoy indescribable states of happiness. The disembodied ones can enter kingdoms of paradisiac happiness such as that of dense concentration, the kingdom of long hair, Vajrapani, or the unlimited vihara of the lotus radiation, Padma Sambhava. The disembodied ones who march towards the intermediate liberation should help themselves by concentrating the mind on any of the kingdoms of the molecular world. It is really very painful to wander from life to life, to roam through the horrible sewer of samsara without enjoying the Buddhic state and the intermediate liberation. There are kingdoms of inconceivable happiness that the disembodied one should make the effort to enter. Let us remember the blissful kingdom of the West governed by Amitabha Buddha. Let us remember Maitreya's kingdom, the heavens of Tushita, that kingdom of supreme bliss which the disembodied ones who are headed towards the electronic world can also enter. The disembodied ones should pray a lot to the Great Compassionate One and his divine triad, firm in their purposes, without allowing themselves to be deviated by anything, if they truly do not want to fall into a new womb without having enjoyed the intermediate Buddhic state in the world of free electrons. Happiness in the electronic regions, the intermediate liberation after having passed through the molecular paradises, is something that is impossible to describe with human words. The Buddhas travel through the inalterable infinite among the indescribable symphonies of the worlds which throb within the bosom of Mother Space. However, every reward, every capital becomes exhausted. When the Dharma of happiness is exhausted, the return to a new womb is then inevitable. The essence loses the ecstasy, attracted by the lunar ego and, already bottled up once again inside the lunar bodies, returns to a new womb. The instant in which the essence loses the ecstasy is that in which it once again separates from its inner Buddha to remain bottled up in the lunar bodies and the pluralized I. The return to a new womb is carried out in accordance with the law of karma. The ego continues in the descendants of its past or past lives. The monads of its past physical body have the power of reuniting atoms, molecules, and of reconstructing cells and organs. In this manner we return to this cellular world garbed with a new physical body. The poor intellectual animal begins his life in this world as a simple germinal cell, subject to the swift time of the cells and ends after about 80 years or more, loaded with memories and experiences of every kind. It is urgent to know that a certain selection also occurs in the process of re-entry or return. The I is a sum of small I's, and not all of those I's return to a new human organism. The I is a sum of different, diverse entities, without an order of any type, and not all of those entities return to a new human organism. Many of those entities re-embody in bodies of horses, dogs, cats, pigs, etc., etc., etc. On a certain occasion when Master Pythagoras was walking with a friend of his, the latter hit a dog. The master scolded him, saying, "Do not hit him. For in his painful bark, I have recognized the voice of an old friend who died." It is clear that upon arriving at this part of our present chapter, the fanatics of the dogma of evolution will launch against us all their defamatory dribble and will protest, saying, "The ego cannot retrogress, everything evolves, everything should reach perfection, etc., etc., etc." Those fanatics ignore that the ego is a sum of small animal I and that like attracts like. Those fanatics ignore that the ego does not have anything that is divine. It is a sum of animal entities that the law of evolution will never be able to take to perfection. The animal entities have the full right to enter animal wombs of dogs, horses, pigs, etc., 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 and that cannot be prohibited by the fanatics of the dogma of evolution, even if they yell, curse, and fume. This is the doctrine of the metamorphosis or metempsychosis of Pythagoras, and founded on the same laws of nature. In the Golden Ass of Apuleius we find this doctrine of Pythagoras totally documented. Apuleius says that in the Thessaly of witchcraft, the rocks were nothing but petrified. Men, the birds, men with wings, the trees, men with foliage, the fountains, human bodies that bled clear lymph. This is an admirable symbolic way to represent the doubtless fact for every occultist, that the different entities that constitute the pluralized I can become re-embodied in the organisms of beasts or enter the mineral, vegetable kingdom, etc., etc., etc. With just reason, Christian mystics speak with love about the sister plant, the brother wolf, the sister rock. Rudolf Steiner, the German initiate, says that only man existed in the polar era and that animals existed later. They were inside man, they were eliminated by man. Those animals were the different parts or entities of the pluralized I of the original men. Those entities that were eliminated from their internal nature and due to the protoplasmic state of the earth of that epoch, marched towards the present physical crystallization. Those polar and Hyperborean men had the need to eliminate those animal entities, that pluralized I, in order to become true men, solar men. Some subjects are so animal-like, that if all that they have that is animal-like was to be removed from them, nothing would remain. Saturn is the planet of death and becomes exalted in Capricorn. This sign is symbolized by a small goat as if to remind us of the goatskin, of the intellectual animals with goatskin, of the need to eliminate what we have that is animal-like in us, the animal entities that we carry within. The stone of Capricorn is the black onyx and every black stone in general. The metal is lead and its day is Saturday. On Saturday, the witches of the Middle Ages celebrated their horrible witches' Sabbath, but Saturday is the seventh day which is so sacred for the Jews. Saturn is life and death. The path of life is formed by the tracks of the hooves of the horse of death. The magnetic currents that ascend from the earth afterwards become divine. The magnetic currents that ascend from the earth after passing through the sieves of the feet continue along the calves, and when they arrive at the knees, they become charged with the lead of Saturn, thus acquiring solidity, form, strength. We are not talking about lead in its gross state, we are talking about lead in a subtle, colloidal state. The knees possess a marvelous substance which permits them the free movement of such a simple and marvelous osseous machinery. That substance is the famous synovia, which comes from the root syn, that means with, and ovia, egg. Altogether, a substance with egg. The egg is very much utilized in the genus science, and we have already talked about this in the second edition of the Esoteric Treatise of Theurgy. The exercise of Capricorn. During the sign of Capricorn, imagine a coffin on the ground. Walk over that imaginary coffin, but imagining it in the middle of the legs. When you walk, you will bend the knees, as if to jump over the obstacle, as if to pass the legs over the coffin, but causing the knees to spin from right to left, with the mind concentrated on them, having the firm intention for them to become charged with the lead of Saturn. Masonic masters will be able to understand this exercise of Saturn very well, because they are the same steps of the Master Mason when entering the lodge. The natives of Capricorn have a disposition for pedagogy. They suffer a lot. They have a great sense of duty. They are practical by nature and always go through great suffering in their life. Someone betrays them. The women of Capricorn are magnificent wives, faithful to death, industrious, hard workers, patient to the maximum, but in spite of all of those virtues, the husband betrays them, abandons them, and often against their own will. Unfortunately, that is their karma. Some women of Capricorn get involved with other men, but this is only after already being abandoned by the husband and after having suffered frightfully. The men and women of Capricorn are quite egotistical, although not all of them. We are referring to the inferior type of Capricorn. Due to this, to that egotism, they make many commitments and also garner enemies for themselves. The natives of Capricorn become very attached to things, to money, and some even become very avaricious. Capricorn is an earth sign, fixed, stable. However, the natives of Capricorn carry out many journeys, even if they are short. The moral pains of Capricornians are terrible. They suffer too much. Fortunately, their practical sense of life saves them, and very soon they overcome the worst bitterness of life. Chapter 11, Aquarius. The occult significance of Aquarius is knowledge. Aquarius, the sign of the water bearer, is an eminently revolutionary sign. There are 4 types of knowledge or secret science. We need to know what these 4 types of knowledge are. First, Yajnavidya, knowledge that is acquired with certain occult powers awakened within our own inner nature, through certain magical rituals. Second, Kabbalistic Mahavidya, the science of the Kabbalah with all its invocations, mathematical symbols and liturgy, which can be angelic or diabolic. It all depends on the type of person that uses it. Third, Gupta Vidya, the science of mantrams, the magic of the verb. It is based on the mystical powers of sounds, on the science of harmony. Fourth, Atmavidya, or real wisdom of the being, of Atman, the superior monad. All of forms of knowledge, except the fourth, are the root of all occult sciences. From all these forms of knowledge, of all of them except the fourth, come the Kabbalah, chiromancy, astrology, occult physiology, scientific cartomancy, etc., etc. From all those forms of knowledge, from all those occultist branches, science has already discovered a few secrets, but the developed spatial sense is not hypnotism, and neither can it be acquired through those arts. The present book of Esoteric Hermetic Astrology has nothing to do with the carnival astrology mentioned in newspapers. In this book we teach the science of Atmavidya. The fundamental thing is Atmavidya. It includes all of them in their essential aspect and can even use them occasionally, but it only utilizes their synthetic extracts purified of all dross. The golden door of wisdom can transform itself into the wide door and broad path which leads to destruction, the door of magical arts practiced with egotistical ends. We are in the age of Kali Yuga, the Iron Age, the Black Age, and all the students of occultism are predisposed to becoming lost in the black path. It is astonishing to see the mistaken concept held by the little brothers regarding occultism and the ease with which they believe they can reach the door and cross the threshold of mystery without a great sacrifice. It is impossible to attain the Atmavidya without the 3 factors for the revolution of consciousness. The Atmavidya is impossible without first having attained the second birth. The Atmavidya is impossible without the death of the pluralized I. The Atmavidya is impossible without sacrifice for humanity. It is not the law of evolution that confers the Atmavidya upon us. It is not the law of involution that confers the Atmavidya upon us. It is only on the basis of tremendous and frightening inner revolutions that we arrive at the Atmavidya. The path of the revolution of consciousness is the path of the razor's edge. This path is terribly difficult. This path is full of dangers within and without. We are now going to study in this chapter each of the 3 factors in an orderly and separate manner, so that Gnostic students can correctly guide themselves. Therefore, let our readers pay much attention to the study of each of the 3 factors of the revolution of consciousness, because success in this work depends on the full comprehension of each of the 3 factors. Birth. The second birth is an entirely sexual problem. The sacred bull Apis among the ancient Egypt had to be young, healthy, and strong to symbolize the philosopher's stone, sex. The Greeks, instructed by the Hierophants, also represented the philosopher's stone in this manner, with 1 or several bulls, as is also seen in the fable of the Cretan Minotaur. The bulls that Hercules stole from Geryon had the same alchemical meaning. We find the same symbolism in the legend of the sacred oxen that grazed in a tranquil manner in the island of Sicily, and which were stolen by Mercury. Not all the sacred bulls were black or white. Some were red like those of Geryon and like those that were sacrificed by the Israelite priest, because the philosopher's stone is red at a certain moment, and this is known by every alchemist. The famous bull Apis, so adored in the Egyptian mysteries, was the creator and prosecutor of souls. The symbolic bull Apis was consecrated to Isis, because it is in fact related to the sacred cow, the divine mother Isis, whom no mortal has ever unveiled. In order for a bull to have the high honor of being promoted to such a category, it was necessary for it to be black and to have on its forehead or on one of its shoulder blades a white spot in the shape of a crescent moon. It is also true that said sacred bull had to have been conceived under the impression of the ray and have under the tongue the mark of the sacred scarab. Apis was the symbol of the moon, both because of its horns in the shape of a crescent moon, as well as because all throughout, except during the full moon, this celestial body always has a tenebrous part indicated by the blackness of the skin and another resplendent side, symbolized by the white spot. Apis is the philosophical matter, the ens seminis, semen, that semi-solid, semi-liquid substance, that vitriol of the alchemists. The entire ens virtutis of the fire is found within the ens seminis. It is necessary to transform the moon into the sun, in other words, to fabricate the solar bodies. These are the mysteries of Isis, the mysteries of the bull Apis. When the Runese was studied in the old Egypt of the pharaohs, its two masculine-feminine aspects were studied because the sacred word Isis is broken up into two syllables. The first syllable is masculine and the second is feminine. The bull Apis is the bull of Isis, the philosopher's stone. The man and woman should work in their laboratorium oratorium with that philosophical matter. They should transform the moon into the sun. It is urgent to acquire magical power called Kriya Shakti or the will of yoga, the magical power of solar men, the supreme power of creation without generation, and this is only possible with the Mithuna, see chapter 8. It is necessary to learn to intelligently combine the waters of life within the two amphras of Aquarius, the zodiacal sign of the water-bearer. It is indispensable to combine the red elixir with the white elixir, if one wants to attain the second birth. The moon symbolizes Isis, the divine mother. The ineffable property and the bull Apis represents the philosophical matter, the sacred stone of the alchemist. In the bull Apis is represented the moon, Isis, the primordial substance, the philosopher's stone, the Mithuna. Aquarius is governed by Uranus and this planet controls the sexual glands. It is impossible to attain the second birth, adepthood, inner self-realization, if we do not study the mysteries of Isis, if we scorn the worship of the bull Apis, if we do not combine the red elixir with the white elixir within the two amphras of Aquarius. In Christian terminology, the four human bodies are mentioned. The first is the flesh body, the second is the natural body, the third is the spiritual body, the fourth, according to the terminology of an esoteric Christian type, is the divine body. Speaking in theosophical language, we will say that the first is the physical body, the second is the astral body, the third is the mental body, the fourth is the causal body or the body of conscious will. Our critics will become upset because we do not mention the lingam sarira or vital body, also known as the etheric double. We certainly do not count such a body due to the concrete fact that the latter is merely the superior section of the physical body, the fundamental basic center of all physical, chemical, caloric, reproductive, perceptual activities, etc. The run-of-the-mill intellectual animal is not born with the astral body, neither with the mental body, nor much less with the causal body. These bodies can only be artificially cultivated in the lit forge of Vulcan, sex. The astral body is not an indispensable implement for the intellectual animal. It is a luxury, a great luxury that very few can afford, nonetheless. The intellectual animal has a molecular body, a body of desires which is similar to the astral body, but is of a lunar type, cold, ghost-like, spectral. The intellectual animal does not have a mental body, but he possesses a subtle, lunar, intellectual animal vehicle, which is very similar to the mental body, but of a cold and ghost-like cold nature. The intellectual animal does not possess the causal body or the body of conscious will, but he has the essence, the buddhata, the soul embryo, which is easily confused with the causal body. The subtle bodies that Leadbeater, Annie Besant, Steiner, and many other clairvoyants studied in the poor run-of-the-mill intellectual animal are the lunar vehicles. Whoever wants to attain the second birth should fabricate for himself the solar bodies, the authentic astral body, the legitimate mental body, the true causal body or body of conscious will. There is something that can surprise Gnostic students. The astral, mental, and causal bodies are of flesh and blood, and after having been born from within the immaculate womb of the Divine Mother, they need to nourish them for their growth and development. There are two types of flesh. The first is flesh which comes from Adam. The second is flesh that does not come from Adam. The solar bodies are of flesh that does not come from Adam. It is interesting to know that the sexual hydrogen, C12, always crystallizes into flesh and blood. The physical body is of flesh and bones, and the solar bodies are also of flesh and blood. The basic food of the physical body is hydrogen-48. The fundamental food of the astral body is hydrogen-24. The indispensable food of the mental body is hydrogen-12. The vital food of the causal body is hydrogen-6. All the masters of the White Lodge, the angels, archangels, thrones, seraphim, virtues, etc., 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 are garbed with the solar bodies. Only those who have solar bodies have the being incarnated. Only someone who possesses the being is an authentic man. The physical body is controlled by 48 laws. The astral body is governed by 24 laws. The mental body is dominated by 12 laws. The causal body depends on 6 laws. It is urgent to descend to the lit forge of Vulcan, sex, in order to work with the fire and water, the origin of worlds, beasts, men and gods. It is urgent to descend into the 9th sphere to fabricate the solar bodies and to attain the second birth. It causes pain to know that many who boast of being masters and saints are still garbed with the lunar bodies. Death. Count de Gabalis is totally mistaken when he says that the salamanders, gnomes, sylphs, nymphs, need to become married with a man in order to become immortal. Count de Gabalis' affirmation is stupid when he says that we need total renunciation to women in order to dedicate ourselves to the immortalization of sylphs and nymphs. The elementals of the elements, of plants, minerals, animals, will be the men of the future without the need of the unworldly coitus recommended by Count de Gabalis. It is a pity that many mediums of spiritualism are married with elementals and that many persons cohabit during dreams with incubi, succubus, and elementals of every type. The internal worlds are full of all kinds of creatures, some good and others bad, others indifferent. The devas or angels are never inferior to man. The devas or angels are true solar men, and that is all. The devas or angels are twice born. For the Chinese, the two most elevated types of invisible inhabitants are the Tian of a totally celestial nature and the Tai, Thursday, or intermediaries. In the narrow passes of Kunlun, the central region of the earth or lunar mountains has placed an entire strange and mysterious world governed by gods. Those divine beings are the Kohan or Lohans, governing gods of millions of creatures. The Tai dress in yellow clothes and dwell in crypts or subterranean caverns. They feed on sesame, coriander, and other flowers. And fruits of the tree of life, they are twice born. They study alchemy, occult botany, the philosopher's stone in the fashion of Master Zanoni and his wise companion, the great Mejner. A third type of invisible inhabitants are the famous Shin or Sham, born here below in the sublunar world, whether it be to work for good, or to pay their old ancestral karma. The fourth type of inhabitants of the internal worlds mentioned by the Chinese are the tenebrous Mahashan, giant sorcerers of black magic. The rarest and most incomprehensible are the terrible Merat or Turam, beings mentioned by the Rig Veda, legions of Hanasmushans. This word is pronounced with an H, in this manner, Hanasmushans. These legions are constituted by 343 families, although certain calculations raise the number to 823 or 543 families. It is lamentable that these Hanasmushans are adored by certain Muslims and Brahmins. Hanasmushans have, as we already said in chapter 9 of this book, two personalities, one angelic and another diabolic. It is clear that the solar, angelic personality of a Hanasmushan never comes to instruct any candidate to initiation, without first telling him with total frankness, "Be careful, we are the temptation that can convert you into an unfaithful." The solar personality of every Merat or Turam, Hanasmushan knows very well that it possesses another lunar, diabolic, tenebrous personality, which is capable of leading astray the candidate to initiation. Two paths open up before every twice-born, that of the right and that of the left. The path of the right is the path of those who resolve to die from moment to moment, of those who dissolve the eye. That of the left is the black path. The path of those who instead of dying from moment to moment, instead of dissolving the eye, fortify it within the lunar bodies. Those who tread the path of the left become Merat or Turam, in other words, Hanasmushans. Those who want to attain the final liberation should die from moment to moment. It is only by dying in oneself that we become perfect angels. 3 types of tantrism exist: white, black and gray. Mithuna with the ejaculation of the ens seminis is black. Mithuna with the ejaculation of the ens seminis sometimes and sometimes without ejaculation is gray. It is with Mithuna without ejaculation that Devi Kundalini ascends through the spinal canal to develop divine powers and transform us into angels. With Mithuna with ejaculation, the igneous serpent of our magical powers, instead of ascending, descends, precipitates itself from the coccygeal bone towards the atomic infernos of man, becoming the tail of Satan. Mithuna with ejaculation sometimes and sometimes without ejaculation is something incoherent, morbid, bestial, which is only useful to fortify the lunar ego. Black tantrists develop the abominable Kundartagwaiter organ. It is necessary to know that said fatal organ is the same tail of Satan. In times which become lost in the profound night of all ages, the poor intellectual animal comprehended his sad situation of being a little machine which is necessary for nature's economy and wished to die. The intervention of certain sacred individuals who committed the error of giving this unfortunate human swarm the abominable Kundartagwaiter organ was then necessary. When the intellectual animal forgot his sad situation of being a little machine and fell in love with the beauties of this world, the abominable Kundartagwaiter organ was eliminated. Unfortunately, the bad consequences of said organ was something which could not be forgotten. They remained deposited in the 5 cylinders of the machine. The first cylinder is that of the intellect and is located in the cerebrum. The second is that of the emotions and resides in the solar plexus, at the level of the navel. The third is that of movement and resides in the superior part of the spinal column. The fourth is that of the instincts and is located in the inferior part of the spinal column. The fifth is that of sex and resides in the sexual organs. The evil consequences of the abominable Kundartagwaiter organ are represented by thousands and millions of small eye of an animal-like and perverse nature. In the intellectual animal, there is neither a single command center, nor an I or permanent ego. Each idea, each sentiment, each sensation, each desire, each I desire this, I desire such and such a thing, I love, I do not love, is a different I. All these small and quarrelsome I argue among themselves. They fight for supremacy. They are not connected among themselves, nor coordinated in any way whatsoever. Each of these small I's depends on the changes of the circumstances of life and on the changes of impressions. Each small I has its own ideas, its own criteria. True individuality does not exist in the poor intellectual animal. His concept, actions, ideas, depend on the I which dominates the situation in those moments. When an I becomes enthusiastic with gnosis, it swears eternal loyalty to our Gnostic movement. This enthusiasm lasts until another I which is against these studies takes over power. We then see with astonishment that the subject leaves and even becomes our enemy. The I which today swears eternal love to a woman is later displaced by another I which has nothing to do with the promise, and then the woman suffers deception. Such an I automatically follows another I, and some appear to always be accompanied by others, but there is not any order or system among all of those egos. Each of those I's believes itself to be everything at a given moment, but it is really nothing but the worst part of our functions, even when it has the impression of being the totality, the reality, the complete man. The interesting thing is that we give credit to the I of a moment, even when that I is displaced by another I moments later. The lunar ego is a sum of I's that should be eliminated in a radical manner. It is necessary to know that each of the 5 cylinders of the machine possesses its own characteristics that we should never confuse. Differences in velocity exist among the 5 centers of the machine. People lavishly praise thinking, but in reality, of truth, the intellectual center is the slowest. Afterwards, operating much faster, follow the instinctive and movement or motor centers, which have more or less the same velocity. The fastest is the sexual center, and is followed in order of speed by the emotional center. There is an enormous difference in speed between each of the 5 centers of the machine. By studying ourselves, by observing ourselves, we will see at a simple glance that movement is faster than thought and that emotion is faster than any movement and thought. The motor and instinctive centers are 30,000 times faster than the intellectual center. The emotional center, when it works at the velocity that is its own, is 30,000 times faster than the motor and instinctive centers. The different centers each have their own completely different rhythm. The velocity of the centers explains a great number of well-known phenomena which run-of-the-mill ordinary science cannot explain. It is enough to remember the astonishing speed of certain psychological, physiological, and mental processes. Every center is divided into two parts, positive and negative. This division is particularly clear for the intellectual center and the instinctive center. The entire work of the intellectual center is divided into two parts, affirmation and negation, yes and no, thesis and antithesis. The same struggle between pleasant and unpleasant exists in the instinctive center. Pleasant sensations, unpleasant sensations, and all of those sensations are related with the five senses: sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch. The struggle between movement and rest exists in the movement or motor center. Pleasant and unpleasant emotions exist in the emotional center. Happiness, sympathy, affection, self-confidence, etc. are positive. Unpleasant emotions such as boredom, jealousies, envy, anger, irritability, fear, are totally negative. In the sexual center, attraction and repulsion, chastity and lust, exist in eternal conflict. The intellectual animal sacrifices his pleasures, if necessary, but he is incapable of sacrificing his own sufferings. Whoever wants to dissolve the pluralized I should sacrifice his own sufferings. Jealousies produce suffering. If we annihilate jealousy, the suffering dies, pain is sacrificed. Anger produces pain. If we put an end to anger, we sacrifice the pain, we destroy it. It is necessary to observe ourselves from moment to moment. The pluralized I works in each of the five centers of the machine. Sometimes it is an I of the emotional center, which is the one that reacts angrily, or is jealous, or envious. Sometimes the prejudices and calumnies of the intellectual center violently attack with all their fury. Other times, the erroneous perverse habits lead us to failure, etc., etc., etc. Each center has 49 subconscious regions, and in each of those regions live millions of I that we need to discover through in-depth meditation. When we auto-discover ourselves, when we become conscious of the activities of the I in the five centers of the machine and in the 49 subconscious regions, we then awaken consciousness. To become conscious of the entire process of the I in the five cylinders of the machine is to make the subconscious conscious. It is impossible to eliminate the different I's if we have not previously comprehended them consciously in the 49 subconscious regions. We can work with Proserpine, the queen of the infernos, eliminating I with the condition of first comprehending the defect that we want to extirpate. See Chapter 8. Proserpine only eliminates the I's which personify the defects that we have comprehended in an integral manner. It is impossible to reach the Atmavidya without first having known ourselves. No se te ipsum, man, know yourself and you shall know the universe and the gods. To know the activity of the five cylinders of the machine in all the 49 passageways or subconscious regions of Jaldabaoth means to know oneself, to make conscious the subconscious, to auto-discover ourselves. Whoever wants to ascend should first descend. Whoever wants the Atmavidya should first descend into his own atomic infernos. The error of many students of occultism is to want to first ascend without first having descended. In interaction with people, our defects spontaneously appear, and if we are alert, we discover what center they proceed from. Then, by means of meditation, we will discover them in each and every one of the 49 subconscious regions. It is only by means of the I dying in a total manner that we attain the Atma Vidya, absolute enlightenment. Sacrifice. Sattvic sacrifice is done in accordance with the divine commandments, concentrating on the worship, only for the worship, by men who do not desire results. Rajasic sacrifice is done out of temptation and desiring the fruits. Tamasic sacrifice is always done against the commandments, without faith, without the mantras, without charity towards anyone, without love for humanity, without offering the sacred offering to the priests or gurus, etc., etc., etc. The third factor for the revolution of consciousness is sacrifice. but sattvic sacrifice, without desiring the fruits of action, without desiring reward, pure, sincere, disinterested sacrifice, giving one's life in order for others to live and without asking for anything as reward. The reader should once again study the lesson of Virgo, chapter 6, in order for him to properly comprehend what the three gunas of the property are, which are called sattva, rajas, and tamas. The law of the solar logos is sacrifice. He crucifies himself at the dawning of life in every new world that surges forth from the chaos, in order for all beings to have life and have it in abundance. Everyone who has attained the second birth should sacrifice himself for humanity, should properly raise the torch on high in order to teach others the path that leads to light. The one who sacrifices himself for humanity attains the Venusian initiation. It is urgent to know that the Venusian initiation is the incarnation of the Christ in man. The one who incarnates the Christ in himself has to live the entire cosmic drama. The Venusian initiation has 7 degrees. It begins with the event of Bethlehem and ends with the death and resurrection of the Lord. The one who reaches the Venusian initiation also becomes a Christ. It is only by means of the 3 factors for the revolution of consciousness that one attains the Venusian initiation. Exercise. The sign of Aquarius governs the calves. Brazilians call the calves ventre das pernas, womb of the legs, and they are not mistaken, for certainly, the calves are a marvelous magnetic womb. The energies that rise from the earth, after passing through the bottom of the feet, reach the calves in their ascending path and meet there the energies which descend from above. From the sky of Uranus. The energies that ascend and those which descend, when they meet, magnetize the calves in an intense manner. That is why the latter are really charged with eroticism. Now we will understand why intellectual animals feel so attracted by the well-shaped calves of women. During the sign of Aquarius, male and female disciples should perform magnetic passes with their 2 hands over their calf, going upward, the purpose of powerfully magnetizing the calves, with the vivid yearning of charging oneself with the extraordinary forces of the constellation of Aquarius. These magnetic passes should be combined with the following prayer. Prayer. Energy, pass through, energy, pass through, energy, pass through, penetrate my organism, ascend to unite with your sister, the current which comes from above, from heaven, from Uranus. Uranus and Saturn are the planets that govern the constellation of Aquarius. Uranus is totally revolutionary, and it is clear that reactionary, conservative, regressive, and retardatory persons cannot understand it. Among the minerals of Aquarius, uranium and lead stand out especially. The sapphire is the stone of Aquarius, so is the black pearl, which is certainly difficult, but not impossible to find. We cannot advise the women of Aquarius to ever marry a Taurine man, because they will be unhappy their whole life. The natives of Aquarius have a great disposition for natural sciences, medicine, chemistry, botany, astrology, biology, astronomy, etc., etc. The natives of Aquarius are each revolutionary in their own way, in their life, customs, house, outside their house, etc., etc., etc. The natives of Aquarius stand out as paladins, some on a large scale, others on a small scale, but they all have a marked tendency to be paladins. Aquarius is the sign of the genius, where Saturn, the ancient of the heavens, provides the profundity that characterizes him, and Uranus, the revolutionary planet, casts its rays over the human species. The Aquarians of a superior type are altruistic, philanthropic, generous, faithful in friendship, sincere. They know how to select their friends by instinct, they know persons by intuition, and they always want fraternity, humaneness. The Aquarian of an inferior type is distrustful by nature, a lover of exaggerated retreats, and his intelligence is only dedicated to things of the physical world, to his problems, his affairs, to everything that is of the senses, and which is material. The Aquarian of a superior type is precise in his affairs, concentrated, profound, persevering, marvelous. The women of Aquarius are good wives, good mothers, but they like to be out of the house, and this bothers the husbands a lot, especially if the latter are Taurines. Chapter 12, Pisces. We have arrived at the mother night of Egyptian cosmology, the profound ocean of Pisces, the initiatic, limitless darkness of absolute abstract space, the first element of the abyss where the undines guard the Rhine gold or the fire of the divine and genetic thought. Pisces is wisely symbolized by two fish. The fish is the soma of the mysteries of Isis. The fish is the living symbol of primitive, Gnostic Christianity. The two fish of Pisces linked by a hyphen have a profound Gnostic significance. They represent the two souls of the primordial Elohim submerged within the deep waters of Mother Night. We have already explained, in previous chapters, that the inner self, the being, Atman, has two souls, one feminine and the other masculine. We have already explained that the spiritual soul, Buddhi, is feminine. We have already said, and we repeat, that the human soul, superior Manas, is masculine. The sacred couple, the divine eternal matrimony, is always symbolized by two fish linked by a hyphen. The latter is the being, Atman. The sacred couple, the two eternal fish, work within the waters of the abyss when the aurora of the Mahamvantra arrives. The two ineffable fish work under the direction of Atman when the hour of the aurora of creation arrives. However, it is good to remember that Isis and Osiris could not ever work in the great work without the famous Mercury of secret philosophy. In this sexual Mercury lies the key to all power. A circle with a traversed vertical line in hieratic symbolism is the very sacred union of the eternal feminine with the eternal masculine, the integration of the opposites in the ineffable and divine, essential monad. The monad, the being, surges forth from within the great mother space. From within the great ocean rise the Elohim to work in the aurora of the Mahamvantra. Water is the feminine element of all creation, from which the Latin mater and the terribly divine letter M originate from. In Gnostic Christianity, Maria, Mary, is the same Isis, the mother of the cosmos, the eternal mother space, the profound waters of the abyss. The word Maria, Mary, is divided into two syllables. The first is Mar, which reminds us of the deep ocean of Pisces. The second is Ia, which is a variant of O, the august name of mother space, the circle of the nothingness, from which everything emanates, and everything returns, the one, the single one of the manifested universes, after the night of the great pralaya or annihilation. Once the superior waters were separated from the inferior waters, light was made, in other words, the animating verb of the cosmos, the sun, surged forth into life, and this life took, as transmitting element, the sun, which is found at the center of our solar system, like the heart within our organism. The fecund vibrations of the sun are really the living elemental fire which condenses in the center of each planet, constituting the heart of it. All that light, all that life, is represented by the seven spirits before the throne, within the heart temple of each of the seven planets of the solar system. The work of separating the waters from the waters corresponds to the sacred couple. Each of the seven spirits before the throne emanated from himself, the sacred couple of fish, in order for the couple to work in the aurora of creation with the power of Kriya Shakti, the power of the lost word, the power of the will and yoga. The love of loves, the mystical passion of the last fire within the eternal husband and the divine wife are vital in order to separate the superior waters from the inferior waters. Transcendental Methuna, Kriya Shakti, creative verb, exists in this work. He provides the fire, and she transmutes the waters, separating the superior from the inferior. The two fish then project that fire and that superior transmuted water upon the waters of the cows, upon the cosmic matter or material for worlds, upon the sleeping germs of existence, and life sprouts forth. The entire work is carried out with the help of the word, the will, and yoga. In the beginning, the universe is subtle. Afterwards it condenses materially, going through successive periods of progressive crystallization. Millions of universes exist in infinite space, within the bosom of mother space. Some universes are coming out of the pralaya, surging forth from within the deep waters of Pisces. Others are in full activity, others are dissolving within the eternal waters. Isis and Osiris could not do anything without the sexual Mercury. The two eternal fish love, adore each other, and live always creating again and again. The fish is the most sacred symbol of primitive Gnostic Christianity. It is a pity that thousands of students of occultism have forgotten the gnosis of the fish. 7 humanities with physical bodies live on our planet Earth, and of all the 7, ours is the last, the only one that is a failure for having lost the gnosis. The other 6 humanities live in the genus state. In the 4th dimension, already in the interior of the Earth, already in many genus regions and areas. The age of Pisces should not have been a failure as it really was. The causa causorum of the Piscean failure was due to certain tenebrous elements who betrayed gnosis and preached certain agnostic or anti-gnostic doctrines, underestimating the fish, discarding the religious wisdom and sinking humanity into materialism. Let us remember Lucio arriving at the city of Hypatia, then staying in the house of Milan, whose wife Pamphila was a perverse witch. A little later, Lucio goes out to buy fish, the Ictius, symbol of the nascent Gnostic Christianity, the fish, soma, of the mysteries of Isis. The fishermen sell it for 20 wretched denarius and with a certain frightful disdain, something that they previously tried to sell for 100 escudos, a terrible satire in which is enveloped the greatest despise for the nascent and already infatuated Gnostic Christianity. The result of the agnostic Christianity was the Marxist materialistic dialectic. The reaction against agnosticism was the godless and lawless repugnant materialism. It can be affirmed that the age of Pisces failed due to agnosticism. The betrayal of gnosis was the most serious crime of the age of Pisces. Jesus Christ and his 12 fishermen initiated an age that could well have been one of great splendors. Jesus and his 12 Gnostic apostles indicated the precise path for the age of Pisces, Gnosticism, the wisdom of the fish. It is a pity that all the sacred books of the sacred gnosis were burned, and the sacred symbol of the fish forgotten. Exercise. During the sign of Pisces, we have to vocalize 1 hour daily. Let us remember that in the beginning was the verb and that the verb was with God and that the verb was God. In ancient times, the 7 vowels of nature resounded in the entire human organism from head to toes, and it is now necessary to restore the 7 notes in the marvelous harp of our organism, in order to restore the lost powers. The vowel I causes the pineal and pituitary glands to vibrate. These 2 small glands are united by a small extremely subtle canal, which has already disappeared in cadavers. The pineal gland is located in the superior part of the cerebrum and the pituitary gland, in the cavernous plexus between the 2 eyebrows. Each of these 2 small glands has its vital aura, and when these 2 auras blend, the spatial sense is developed, and we see the ultra of all things. The vowel E causes the thyroid gland, which secretes the biological iodine, to vibrate. This gland is located in the throat, and in it resides the chakra of the magical ear. The vowel O causes the heart chakra, the center of intuition and all types of powers, to travel in the astral, genus state, etc., to vibrate. The vowel U causes the solar plexus, located in the umbilical region, to vibrate. This solar plexus is the telepathic center and the emotional cerebrum. The vowel A causes the pulmonary chakras, which permit us to remember our past lives, to vibrate. The vowel M, profanely held as a consonant, is vocalized with the lips closed, without opening the mouth, and the sound that then comes out through the nose is the M. The vowel M causes the ens seminis, the waters of life, the mercury of secret philosophy, to vibrate. The vowel S is a sweet and gentle hissing which causes the fire inside of us to vibrate. Seated in a comfortable armchair, we have to vocalize E, A, O, U, A, M, S, carrying the sound of each of these 7 vowels from the head to the feet. It is necessary to inhale, then exhaling the air together with the well-prolonged vowel sound, until exhausting the exhalation. This exercise has to be done daily in order to develop the internal magical powers. Pisces is governed by Neptune, the planet of practical occultism, and by thundering Jupiter, the father of the gods. The metal of Pisces is the tin of Jupiter, its stones, the amethyst, the corals. Pisces governs the feet. Usually, the natives of Pisces have 2 wives, several children. They are of a dual nature, and they have a disposition for 2 professions or trades. The natives of Pisces are very difficult to comprehend. They live like the fish, in everything, but separated from everything by the liquid element. They adapt to everything, but deep down, they despise all the things of the world. They are exquisitely sensitive, intuitive, and profound, and people cannot comprehend them. The natives of Pisces have a great disposition for occultism, due to the fact that Pisces is governed by Neptune, the planet of esotericism. The women of Pisces are very nervous, sensitive like a very delicate flower, intuitive, impressionable. Pisces persons have good social sentiments. They are happy, peaceful, hospitable by nature. The danger of Pisces people is of falling into laziness, negligence, passivity, and indifference for life. Pisces people can even reach the lack of moral responsibility. The mind of Pisces people oscillates between rapid or fatal comprehension, laziness, and disdain for the most necessary things of life. Those are two extremes, and they just as soon fall into one extreme as they do into the other. The will of Pisces people is sometimes strong, but inconsistent on other occasions. When Pisces people fall into indifference and extreme passivity, they allow themselves to be carried away by the current of the river of life, but when they see the seriousness of their conduct, they put their steel will into play, and they then radically change the entire course of their existence. Pisces people of a superior type are 100% Gnostic. They possess a will of unbreakable steel and a very elevated sense of moral responsibility. The superior type of Pisces produces great enlightened beings, masters, initiated kings, etc., etc. The inferior type of Pisces has a marked tendency towards lust, alcoholism, gluttony, laziness, pride. Pisces people like journeys, but not all of them can travel. Pisces people have a great imagination and tremendous sensitivity. It is very difficult to comprehend Pisces people. Only Pisces people can comprehend Pisces people. What for run-of-the-mill people has great importance is worth nothing for Pisces people, but he is diplomatic, he adapts himself to people, he appears to agree with them. The most serious thing for the natives of Pisces is to have to define themselves in the conjugal matter, for almost always, two basic, fundamental loves put them in a dead-end alley. The superior type of Pisces already transcends all these weaknesses and is chaste in an absolute manner. Usually, Pisces people customarily suffer a lot with the family in their first years. It is difficult to find a Pisces person who was happy with his family during his first years. The very inferior type of women of Pisces falls into prostitution and alcoholism. The superior type of women of Pisces never falls in this manner. They are like a very delicate flower, like a beautiful lotus flower. Samael Aun